Welcome to the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Council with hosts Grace Evans and Moses Brattrud. Stay informed on the top stories on life, family, and religious freedom. Get the facts, stand for truth.
Hello and good morning. Welcome to the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Council. I'm Moses Brattrud here with Grace Evans.
Hello, hello.
We're so excited to bring you the top stories this week. Life, family, religious freedom, that's what we focus on so that you can get the facts and stand for truth. Here's a little preview of what we'll be talking about today. First of all, the Women's March that took place this past weekend. Second of all, a Pennsylvania state representative wants to force men to have vasectomies.
Oh boy.
That's a fun one. And then there's a really interesting article in, I think, the New York Times or the New Yorker about whether having kids is selfish. The author concludes that it is.
Spoiler alert.
And finally, we'll talk about the Hyde Amendment, one of the most important pieces of pro-life legislation that's at the federal level. And Democrats are in disagreement about whether to keep that going forward. So those are the top stories this week. First of all, let's talk about the Women's March.
Yeah.
There are national women's marches, and then there's a local one, right? Or local ones around the country, right?
Yep, exactly. So this weekend, there, again, like you say, Women's March, one in D.C., one's in big cities all over the country. There was one here in St. Paul at our capital. There was one in Denver, Colorado. There's one in Oregon. There's ones all over. And what we saw this weekend, Moses, was a shocking display of pro-abortion violence towards women. So I just want to unpack that for you. I want to unpack how the Women's March is anti-women. They're not pro-choice. They're pro-abortion.
That's kind of awkward, when you're like marching for women, but you're actually anti-woman.
And we're going to talk about exactly why. So I want to go into detail with one specific story. I follow Christine Yergin pretty closely on Instagram. We've talked about her before on an Unwoke video. She was a single mom, raised her son, who is an awesome pro-life advocate now. I think he's about 15. Anyways, her name's Christine Yergin. Definitely follow her on Instagram if you want to keep up on what she's doing. She raises lots of money for pregnant women in unplanned pregnancies. Anyways, this weekend she was protesting in Denver, Colorado. And she reported this on her Instagram, and Instagram has actually been censoring her and taking down the post repeatedly.
What, on what basis?
On the basis, I don't know what the basis is, but it keeps getting reported. And it keeps getting taken down and then reinstated and then getting taken down.
Sounds she's got a bit of a mob following her and
she
reporting
does.
her posts.
She definitely does. She is very hated by the pro-abortion movement for everything she does to help women, because she totally busts the narrative that the pro-life movement, quote unquote, doesn't help women and they aren't pro-life, they're just pro-birth. She totally busts that because she does local fundraisers for pregnant women that are either reported to her through Instagram or reach out through Instagram. So she has this whole ministry called Be Their Village, which is awesome. Cool. But anyways, so this weekend she was at Denver, and she was with just 4 other pro-lifers, and hundreds of pro-abortion activists swarmed just these 5 pro-lifers, which just goes to show how threatened they feel by our message, which is the truth.
Right.
And they swarmed these women. They were all women, and one woman was pregnant. And her baby, the pregnant woman, her baby got threatened. Her life got threatened, and her own life got threatened.
Oh my gosh.
Multiple times. So this is reported by Christine. She says that they were punched, shoved on, spit on, stolen from, harassed, stalked, and had multiple items thrown at them.
Good grief.
Their signs were repeatedly blocked. They kept the pro-abortionists kept moving in front to block their signs. So they really truly were harassed. And this is a quote from Christine that I think is really important to read. She says, according to the Women's March, women are peasants, and the right to kill their own sons and daughters is their God. If you're a woman who doesn't agree, assaulting you is acceptable to them, which really is so true about it. And the thing I want us to realize about this one story, thankfully they got out okay. They were actually escorted by two people wearing pink T-shirts. So 2 pro-choice, pro-abortionists actually escorted them because they were scared for their safety. When things started getting really rough, they were like, okay, we need to leave because we're with our pregnant friend. We don't want her to get injured. They actually walked them to their car because they knew that their lives were in danger, which is amazing when you do see that. When you see that sort of camaraderie over human life, even though what they're standing for is antithetical to human life. So I don't want to paint a picture that every single pro-choicer is like this, but the majority of people who are pro-choice are simply pro-abortion. Right. And so I just want to make the point that this happened all over the country. Autumn Lindsay, now Autumn Higashi, she just got married. She's a student spokesperson for Students for Life, reported very similar things where she was protesting. We saw Anna Lulis, also Students for Life. She's their data strategist, report similar things that she faced in D.C.
So this is like the Women's March seems to be always kind of about wearing, it seems to me like it was always about abortion, but it seems like this year abortion was even more so the focus.
So something else that's very interesting to note about the Women's March, Moses, is the fact that their signs, the signs that they're holding, are truly vile. The pro-life message is one of unity, one of love and care and support for women and children, protecting life from its earliest. Great messages, pro-life is pro-women, but then you have these absolutely awful signs from the pro-abortionists, and I'll have our producer put some of those pictures up on the screen for us because it really just exposes what the pro-abortion movement is all about. There were signs about how they hate kids, how kids should die, just so many terrible things. I know. And so it shows how vile the pro-abortion movement is and how they truly are pro-abortion. They're not pro-equality, and they're not pro-women.
That is crazy, and I did actually see some of the, and so those are the signs that they did allow in. I heard that the organizers on their website were saying that they did not want signs this year that featured quote unquote coat hanger imagery, and that's a standard pro-abortion trope that if abortion becomes illegal, then women will procure illegal abortions.
And I know exactly why they didn't want that imagery.
Right, procure abortions illegally and possibly using a coat hanger, which sounds horrifying to me. But this is what they said. They're not saying this is horrifying. They're saying that this could, quote, accidentally reinforce the right-wing talking points that self-managed abortions are dangerous, scary, and harmful. Which I think, what are they preparing for? We're at a state where abortion is legal in all 50 states, okay, with the possible exception of Texas, which we're grateful for. But 49 states, right? But they're still we've really seen a 180 where they're a couple years ago it was if you make abortion illegal, we'll have to do unsafe abortions.
Right.
And now they're saying if abortion becomes illegal, we're going to do this. And by the way, it's completely safe.
And I think it's
kind of so ghoulish.
It really is. And I think since they're really pushing the abortion pill right now, that's probably why they don't want this sort of imagery, because the abortion pill is something that women usually take by themselves at home in their own bathroom on their own toilet.
I'm not sure that's what they're talking about, though.
Really?
Because
I think that's
a doctor has to prescribe the pill.
That's true, but you can get it prescribed online now, which is ridiculous.
That's true, and that is ridiculous. But the quote here was self-managed abortions.
You could make the argument that that's self-managed, though, because there is no medical intervention,
right,
unless you're rushed to the hospital. But
and we talked last week how dangerous and scary that can be, just the abortion pill, and how it is possible to reverse it.
But the point being made is that the pro-abortion movement is scared, and they're scared because life is winning. And I don't want us to brush over that fact lightly, because sometimes it can be hard when all of mass media, all the biggest businesses, big tech, big business, they're all saying the same message, and they're saying the pro-abortion message, and that's what they support. And big companies like Sephora donate to Planned Parenthood so much money, which is a big makeup company for girls, if you're not familiar. But anyways, they do all these things, but...
I'm married. I know what Sephora is. I have been there several times. I went to Sephora in Paris one time. That was fun.
Wow. Anyways, the truth is that the pro-life movement is winning, and our message is winning. So just be encouraged by that. There's a lot more we could say about the Women's March, but in general, I just wanted to brush up on Christine Jurgen's story in particular. That's not just one story. There are multiple stories like that across the country, but that was just one specific story. And just abortion and feminism, and how the feminist movement has been hijacked by the abortion industry. Without further ado, though, Moses, we really need to talk about, apparently, this bill that was introduced about men being forced to have vasectomies.
Oh my goodness.
I know it's this representative or legislator saying that we should start policing men's bodies, and it's kind of in response to the Texas bill, but it just seems so ridiculous.
Yeah. So Pennsylvania State Representative Chris Rabb, he's a Democrat, and I'm really struggling to be totally honest with you, I can't tell if this is a joke. He doesn't say it's a joke. He does not say that.
I think it's meant to be a jab.
A jab,
A
yeah,
jab
but it's
at
like,
women.
if you're introducing a bill, I think, I mean, I understand that many bills have no chance of becoming law, but, like, aren't you at least considering that, like, it's not clear from anything he says that he's not serious about this.
Yeah.
Even though news coverage has referred to the bill as satirical. I'm like, well, he hasn't said it's satirical. Anyhow, so Chris Rapp, he seems like a real chip off the old block. And he introduced this satirical legislation in which all men would be forced to have a vasectomy within 6 weeks of having their third child or turning 40, whichever comes
That's
first.
crazy.
And this is somehow in response to Texas's quote-unquote extreme abortion bill.
I mean, that bill definitely won't get very far.
Thankfully it won't get very far. But the fact that it's even being proposed, so it doesn't refer to men in the bill. It refers to inseminators, and grants a 10,000.
How do you feel like about being reduced to that?
Yeah, no, I don't feel good about that. So this bill would grant a $10,000 reward to private Pennsylvania citizens who report violators who wrongfully conceive a child.
Who wrongfully conceive a child.
It also codifies the definition of, quote, wrongful conception to include anyone who, quote, demonstrated negligence towards preventing contraception during intercourse.
Wow.
I think that has to be a typo. It must be preventing conception rather than
preventing
contraception.
That's what it means.
But that's what the article says. And then I love this. As long as legislators continue to restrict the hashtag reproductive rights of cis women, trans men, and non-binary folks, FOLX, there should be laws to address the responsibility of men who impregnate them. What about trans women who impregnate them? I think if you're being inclusive with your language, you got to go the whole hog, or the whole sow, just to be inclusive. Okay. Then he continues, and this is great. So it's just like this is the amount of.
I'm sorry. What?
Oh no. Okay. The language of the bill also includes a number of sexual innuendos and vasectomy-related terms. Oh my gosh. As we head toward, etc., of this heated discourse, we should come together to address it with surgical precision. Oh no. We must also commit to mending the social fabric being sliced up by bitter acrimony. Oh, that's...
Bitter acrimony?
Does this guy ever want to be reelected again?
Honestly, he's probably being seen as standing up for pro-abortion women and their rights because it's, vasectomies and abortion the same thing.
Yeah.
Which
that is the comparison that's being made, right?
Right.
That having. Okay, so first of all, sometimes in response to the Texas bill, I saw a lot of people saying, "Well, men should be regulated too," and I'm like, Yes, thank you. Stop treating pregnancy as if it's something that a woman just magically does to herself.
Right. No, it's actually so true. And I hate that, the pro-abortion movement really has enabled men to not be men.
Right.
Because with abortion, it's an easy cover-up, and no one can ever know that you even had a kid, and boom, suddenly your kid is gone, literally killed. It enables men to not stand up and take responsibility for what they've done and the life that they've created, and especially empowers rapists.
And all too frequently, men, boyfriends, husbands, significant others are the ones who are driving the women to the clinic. Yep. Because they do not want to deal with that. Yeah,
the majority of abortions are undergone because women don't feel supported. So there's either pressure from a significant other or from family, or because they feel like they're not financially stable enough to have a child, which very, very much go hand in hand.
Right.
But really, banning abortion is not restricting a woman's bodily autonomy. Why not? We talk about this a lot on the podcast. The woman's body is not the baby's body. The baby's body is not the woman's body. There's a separate baby from the moment of conception, unique DNA. We always need to bring the debate back to the autonomy and the inherent worth of the preborn baby, because when we do that, again, number one, we win the debate, we win the argument about the pro-life movement and about babies in the womb, but also it reinstates the truth that vasectomies, forced sterilization, and abortion are not the same thing, because with vasectomies, that's your body, just your body is involved, so you have the right to choose what you want to do with that, but with abortion, you do not have the right over someone else's body to take the life of another child, of another human being.
Right. I'm just going to say, though, vasectomies are gross. Have kids, people.
Wow.
And so yeah, like, as you say, Grace, breaking it down, these are not the same thing. And so finally, this is Rab's like conclusion. To each person who views this bill I've introduced as absurd. Yeah, count me in, Chris. I'd urge you to apply equal scrutiny to laws in places like Texas, which enact paternalistic restrictions on the personal liberty of cis women, trans men,
I feel
and
like it's
non-binary
definitely
individuals
satirical.
who have an unwanted pregnancy. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. I think as I read through this, I understand that it is meant to be not exactly a joke, I wouldn't say, because it's meant to be bitter satire.
I think it's meant to, like, make you outraged.
It's
when
meant
you
to be
see
like
that.
a Handmaid's Tale type
I was
of
gonna say
situation.
that. Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, look at how ridiculous this thing is. So this other thing must be ridiculous.
Right.
But if those two things are completely unlike each other, then that's actually not that great of a comparison.
Have you read The Handmaid's Tale?
No, I haven't.
I've read it. I don't know. I mean, it's very dark, so definitely if you're younger and you're watching this, have some wisdom going into that. Maybe talk to your parents about it. But it's very interesting. I think it's important to be aware of the book because, pro-abortionists reference it all the time, and they say that the pro-lifers are doing exactly what people did to women in The Handmaid's Tale.
Right.
So I think it's an interesting concept. It's not really something I would reread because it's very dark without too much oomph to it.
Yeah.
Because it's also kind of it's supposed to be a jab at the Bible too, with
Sounds
Abraham
great.
and Sarah. So I don't know. It's definitely important to be aware of what's going on and what culture's referencing. But I wouldn't say it's like a book that everyone needs to read. So.
I'm glad you've read it because that is something I hear often that we're living in The Handmaid's Tale. It's just like one of those progressive talking points that you hear so often. So we've talked already today about abortion and we've talked about vasectomies.
Wow.
If you don't have either of those things, then you might end up with a child. However, a new article is arguing that having children period is selfish. You want to talk us through that?
Yeah, so this is the article. It was run by thecut.com. The title is Giving Birth in the End Times. And writer Emily Holloman, I think that's how you say her last name, she discusses the apocalypse of our future and the terrifying idea of motherhood. So really what I want to do is just read you a few quotes from this because it will not get the same point across if I just summarize it because it really is so shocking what she says. And I just want to get your reaction and maybe we can just talk through why is it the wrong outlook to have as Christians first and foremost, because this podcast is from a Christian perspective and that's how we analyze cultures through our biblical worldview. So that being said, I'm going to read you a quote from her. This is about halfway through the article. She says, "The decision to have children has always struck me as an essentially selfish one. You choose, out of a desire for fulfillment or self-betterment or curiosity or boredom or baby mania or peer pressure, to bring a new human into this world. And it has never seemed more selfish than today. From a global perspective, having a child in a developed nation is among the most environmentally unsound decision you can make.
No.
A baby born in the United States adds another 58.6 tons of carbon to the atmosphere per year. That wipes out the net positives of my 25 years of vegetarianism in roughly 3 months. On the individual level, as fires rage and hurricanes form, as water grows scarce and fields lie fallow, it's hard not to wonder, what kind of future can we offer a child?"
I actually watched a great video last week, and it was about what we can actually do to fix climate change. And it was, I'm not arguing for or against whether climate change is caused by humans or whether it's just the sun getting hotter or whatever. But the point of the video was, there's not really very much we can do as individuals. Like you can use cardboard straws.
Starbucks gave me a paper straw yesterday, and it just
useless.
kind of, I feel like this is going to be used as a smear campaign, but it kind of ruined my drink. It was like, I don't know, the papery taste,
Yeah, that sounds
And
nasty.
it's so soggy. It gets so soggy. I was drinking for like 2 minutes and it was already this soggy thing in my mouth and it was just
That's nasty. Anyway. So the point of the video was it's from some German YouTube channel called Kurzgesagt, and the point of the video is we can't individually do very much. Like our individual decisions don't matter, so we shouldn't be that guilty about it.
It's kind of like a nihilistic approach to it, which is interesting.
Oh, that channel is so nihilistic.
Really?
They literally have videos about nihilism.
That's interesting.
So so the point being, though, that we should give up this individual guilt that some people have about, oh no, should I fly to this place instead of driving? Like, stop it. Don't just live your life. There are bigger things to worry about. If you are concerned about the environment, you need to talk about the leadership of the country at a national level, because that's the place where decisions get made. And I don't want to get off topic.
Yeah, here's my thing. I don't really have a problem if people decide they want to drive somewhere rather than fly. Like, decide what's best for you. It's up to you. Honestly, I really, truly don't care. But what I do have a problem with is this fear-mongering that's going around about having kids and having families, and how apparently having a kid is the most selfish thing you can do here in America today. That's absolutely untrue. And it's also, I think I've said this maybe before on the podcast when we've talked about the idea of global warming, but if you think the world is truly going to end, and if you think that time is running out, wouldn't you want to have loved ones around you? Like, if the world is going to burn up, wouldn't you want to have loved ones with you in those moments, not be completely alone and have lived a very joyless and loveless life?
That's true, but also we know that's not the way the world's going to end.
Right. But I'm just using their logic.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Like,
'cause
the world is not going to end in fire within the next 50 years.
I mean, it depends what your eschatology is. Just using
well, no, yeah, I guess
it kind of does depend on your eschatology, though.
You could say maybe Jesus will come back in the next 50 years. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the glory of his appearing and the hope that Christ offers to all of us means that it is just automatically net positive to be born, and that's part of the reason why Christians are so focused on and serious about having kids as one of the best things that we can do for the world. And I just want to say, like, I'm a parent. My wife and I are pregnant with our second child, and
fun.
It is so fun, and we're finding out the gender tomorrow.
Oh, really? That's so exciting.
Yes.
Are you going to share with us?
I probably will. Yes, I probably will
so
share
excited.
with the podcast. Whether it's a boy or a girl. So
yay.
So just like becoming a parent absolutely nuked my life. Like, it was a completely different.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because this article says it's selfish to have a child. It's all about you. But can you bust that myth about having a child? Because you actually have one, almost two. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, like, actually, like, real talk, having a child is one of the most selfless things that you can do. Because
really
I and especially my wife are giving. Let's say that my wife wanted to have a career, which she might, but at this point she's at home with our daughter full time, so she is sacrificing her most productive, quote unquote, earning years to care for our daughter, because that is more important than going and collecting a paycheck, and so that we could potentially have a bigger house or whatever you can buy with more money. But my wife and I are making sacrifices so that we can raise a child. And we're doing that because children are a heritage from the Lord. And blessed is the man who has his quiver full of them, as the psalm says. So and we are pouring into our daughter, and we're going to pour into this new child as well. We are giving her everything we have. And my parents did the same to me. And that the idea is that the more we give, then the better she is set to do whatever she wants to do in life. And that there's just something so fundamentally joyful about that. And yet this mindset is so
toxic.
So it's so toxic. It's also so common. I want to tell you one other thing. I was talking with a friend from Seattle, and he's single. And he is a Christian. He'll go on dating apps, and he'll occasionally go on a date. He's a faithful Christian guy. He's not engaging in hookup culture, but he does want to get married, and so he'll occasionally go on a date. But he's telling me about the dating profiles that he sees on these sites. And very frequently, people will say, well, I'm not looking for one thing they'll say is, I'm just not looking for a partner, I'm just looking for fun, right?
Yikes.
Yeah, yikes.
Yikes.
But very commonly, you'll see that people want DINK. Are you familiar with that?
No.
Dual income, no kids. So that is this new
No wonder
lifestyle.
I don't know about it.
yeah, this new lifestyle that people like the woman in this article, at least
it's kind of like a
kid.
financial thing. That's why you get married or something, like for the tax write-off.
Like no, she's just saying it's not even about marriage.
Oh, just living together, yeah.
Just like I want to cohabitate with you. I want us to pool our resources so we can get the biggest house and the fanciest car.
Do they sleep together or no? Is it just like we
living
just live together? Okay.
And sleeping together, yeah. Having essentially a marriage and everything but name, but we will use fancy fake chemicals to prevent ourselves from having children so that we can live our 75, 85 years in peace and quiet with no children.
Which honestly is so sad, because imagine being on your deathbed and having no one there.
Yeah.
And you don't have any kids that care. There's no one at your funeral, or no kids at your funeral, because instead of living for others, you lived for yourself.
Yeah.
That's so sad.
I've spent a decent amount of time in nursing homes visiting friends and relatives, and I haven't encountered this firsthand. What I've seen is pastors will often ask for prayer on social media for a certain person who's elderly and who has literally no one. No brothers, no sisters.
So sad.
No children.
I see that too. Yeah.
And like to enter old age, to deal with something like Alzheimer's without that support is horrifying. So we're getting a little bit off the beaten path, but what I'm seeing, or what you're saying, what this woman is saying, is that having a child is selfish, when the actual fact is that having a child is one of the most selfless things that you can do as a human.
Which is why part of the reason why abortion is so common too.
Absolutely.
Because
it is such a thing that you are doing, and that you have to commit to.
Right. It's so much work to...
Children are not low maintenance.
No, it's so much. When you have
that.
a newborn, you're waking up multiple times a night, sometimes every hour, every 30 minutes, feeding the child, changing the child's diaper. You do that for at least a year, and then, I mean, obviously sometimes the sleeping gets better, but then you're never off when you have kids. Like when Moses gets home from work, he doesn't just come inside, turn on the TV, eat dinner with his wife on the couch. No, as soon as he gets home, he's there for his daughter and soon to be next child.
Giving her hugs.
Yeah, giving her hugs. Exactly. It's at all times.
And
the kids wake up
like,
in the night and cry.
I would not have it any other way. Right. Like, it is absolutely such a blessing to have children. She is just, my daughter, Mary, is just a joyous person. And I'm just so blessed by her. And just taking that to the other end of life, our coworker, Mary, her mom recently passed away. And I believe that there were between 7 and 9 living children that this woman had.
Wow. And
between them all, they were able to keep her living in her house throughout her entire life until she died at 94, 95, 96 years old. They were able to pool the resources, hire a caregiver so that she could stay in her home that she had lived in almost her entire life. Mm-hmm. They kept her there. Mary, our coworker, visited her. She took a day off every week to visit her, and her other siblings did the same. And that is the type of blessing that children are able to give to you in your old age. Mm-hmm. And how blessed was her mom as she dealt with dementia and memory loss. And Mary would, our coworker Mary, just would talk about what a blessing that was just to her, now to spend time with the mom, even when it's hard for her mom to remember who she is. And that's the picture of life that as Christians we should encourage. Life is a beautiful thing. I mean, we don't want to ignore the suffering. We don't want to sweep that under the rug. And part of the beauty of life is bringing that to the next generation.
Yeah, and I just want to say that life, from a Christian perspective, life is so short. And I think we underestimate that, because from the day to day, it seems like, the days stretch on so long. I'm in my junior year of college. It feels like I've been in college forever, and it's taking so long. But then when I look back, this is a C.S. Lewis quote, day by day, as you go on, nothing really seems different. But when you look back, everything is different.
Right.
It's not word for word, but that's the gist of it. And really, as Christians, life is so short, but what we're called to do is to make a difference in the world. And what better way to make a difference in the world than by having children and raising them up to love the Lord? I mean, that's the cultural mandate. That's what we're called to do as Christians. And I can't imagine purposefully disobeying God's command to me because I'm afraid of the future. I mean, God doesn't call us to have a spirit of fear. He calls us to trust in Him and hope in Him, and being afraid of potential disasters in the future and letting that deeply impact the way we live, like this woman is doing, is not Christian. And of course, she isn't Christian, but we don't have very much time on this earth. And not because, something's going to happen, but because life is short and humanity is frail and we're weak individuals and we will not live forever. I mean, you will if you're a Christian in the next life, but you're not going to live forever on earth. And it's so easy to lose sight of eternity sometimes. And I think, what we do on earth really does matter because, again, God tells us that we need to have an impact. And that's why Moses and I are so passionate about what we do and why we do it, and training the next generation. Like he said this before on the podcast, it is like a down payment on the future. It's an investment in the future, because if we want to change the world, and Moses and I want to change the world, we want to see changes, we want to be the change we want to see America become pro-life from womb to tomb. If we want to see that, we need to raise the next generation to carry on that fight, because I'm Gen Z, but in 30 years, we're going to have a new generation that's going to carry that fight on. I mean, I'm going to be fighting till I die, but there's constantly a new generation. Unless we're teaching them and training them in to love the Lord and to fight for truth, then we're going to see the world get worse and worse.
Right. And as we've talked about in previous episodes, the real threat is not that we'll have too many kids and have too much of a carbon footprint, but that we won't have any kids and that our culture will die on the vine. So in the last few minutes, and I want to thank you for bringing that piece, because it's just so stark, the contrast between the Christian conception of what a full life is and how we can, by seeing children as something, as a bringer of joy and also a sign of the future, of future prosperity, instead of seeing them as not just a burden, but some type of apocalyptic liability.
Right, that's truly how she views it.
So in the last few minutes, I wanted to talk about some national news. There's a lot of wrangling in Washington right now over this spending bill. It's going to be a big humdinger of a bill. I've heard $1.4 trillion.
Oof.
And every time there's a spending bill, the debate over whether to include the Hyde Amendment comes up. The Hyde Amendment first came about in 1980. Before it took effect, over 300,000 abortions were performed annually using taxpayer funds. In every budget bill since that has included the Hyde Amendment has prohibited federal funds from being used for abortions. And so this is a big deal, and the Hyde Amendment is supported by 57% of voters, at least according to a 2016 poll. So the question is, should this be in the new bill? And Democrats have, in the past, Democrats have almost always compromised because they want the spending that's in the bill more than they want to have a fight with Republicans over getting rid of the Hyde Amendment. Yeah. Things this year might be different. Representative Pramila Jayapal of Washington State, she has said that she does not want that to be in the spending bill. And then Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, obviously the House and Senate both need to pass the spending bill, and Senator Joe Manchin has said that the Hyde Amendment is a requirement for his vote on the budget. And he told National Review last week, we're not taking the Hyde Amendment off. Hyde's going to be on. It has to be. That's dead on arrival if that's gone. Now, House Democrats, including Jayapal herself, as well as Senate Democrats like Senator Dick Durbin, have frequently voted for the Hyde Amendment. And it's just crucial that Washington, D.C. not fund abortions. That is just something we've had in place for 40 years, and it is just so important. Now, 16 states, including Minnesota, do fund abortions with our own taxpayer dollars. What we're trying to do by supporting the Hyde Amendment is making sure that stays the case, that does not become the case at the federal level, that our federal tax dollars are not used in abortion. Nearly 6 in 10, a more recent poll, 6 in 10 Americans oppose using taxpayer money.
And that's a 2021 poll, very, very recent Marist poll. So definitely it's not true. There's this myth that most Americans oppose the Hyde Amendment, and that's not true.
Yeah, no. In fact, as we've said, most Americans support the Hyde Amendment, including 31% of Democrats. And so as we continue the budget negotiations, and I do encourage you to pay attention to what's happening in D.C. and not just the flashy stuff, not just the General Milley testifying in front of the Senate last week about Afghanistan, about the failure there, but also the less sexy stuff, the backroom negotiations that are taking place as we talk about extending the federal debt limit so that we can borrow more money, as we talk about this massive spending bill.
That's why they have us too, because we will keep you up to date, because I know it's a lot to take in sometimes, trying to keep up with local news here in Minnesota, but also nationwide. Moses and I, our dedication to you is to bring you the top stories on life, family, religious freedom every single week, so that you get the facts and you can stand for truth and you don't have to do all of that digging. So definitely tune in every week. We will keep you posted on the top stories.
Yes, we'll make sure to keep you posted as to what's happening with the Hyde Amendment going forward as we come hopefully to a decision on this spending bill. Now, our remaining time, Grace, I want to ask you, what are you reading this week?
Yeah, so I'm rereading one of my favorites, the book Thief. It is a fictional book, actually. Okay. Sometimes you just need a good fictional read. Yeah. And it's set in under the Nazi regime, and it's just about this girl who loves to read books. And I don't want to go into too much more because I don't want to spoil anything, but death is actually one of the main characters. So it's very interesting, and you hear some narrative from his perspective, actually. And it's definitely...
I think it's actually really sexist that death is always portrayed as a man. Can I get an amen?
I was going to make a joke, but I don't know. I was going to say maybe he should get a vasectomy.
I like that. Can we get Mr. Speaker, I ask for universal affirmation that death be forced to get a vasectomy. Excuse me, I interrupted you.
So I'm reading that, and it's a very good book. It is. I mean, obviously, it's set during the Nazi regime, so it's a little bit dark, so definitely be aware of that if you're younger. But it's a good one to come back to, and yeah, I really like it. How about you, Moses?
I want to first of all confess something. I was reading a book last week, and I did give up on it. I really try to finish my books, but this was just like, it was the weirdest people in the world. It was just so dry that I had to give up. So I moved on. To a book called How Not to Be Secular by James K. A. Smith, who's a professor at Calvin University.
I've read You Are What You Love by him.
Oh, really?
It was good.
Was it good? Okay.
Yeah, it was good.
This is the first book of his I've read, and it's pretty short. It's a field guide for living in a secular world using a book called A Secular Age by Charles Taylor as a guide. What it means for us to live in a post-Christian world. Which has a bunch of competing beliefs and growing unbelief. It's a way to get our bearings in post-modernity is how the book is described. And I have to say, I've been really enjoying it so far. And I think it is really reading. I've read A Secular Age, and now reading this book about a secular age. It really has changed the way I think about things. Just how believers and unbelievers alike, we have a different worldview than our forefathers did 300 years ago. I could go on for so long about that because it's actually partly what my dissertation is on, which I'm working on now. So that's what I'm reading. That's what Grace is reading. And this has been the Family Beacon from Minnesota Family Council. I want to remind you to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you use Apple Podcasts to listen to the podcast. That really helps us get new listeners and viewers, and we so appreciate all the reviews we've had so far. Same thing on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, please hit that bell icon so that you get a ding, ding, ding notification every time we release a new episode, every Friday, plus exclusive content clips throughout the week. Thank you so much for watching. We bring you the facts so that you can stand for truth. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to or watching this episode of the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Council. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you're up to date on life, family, and religious freedom. You can follow us on Instagram at MN Family Council and subscribe to us on YouTube to watch our content. Get the facts, stand for truth.